My aunt lives in Camp Bartlett, and it's a house that I'd grew up with. Gone. I was in shock. I hoped I was standing in the wrong place. I regret that I tried to save nothing from my aunt's house. I didn't want to go on. It's amazing how well the college has come through. We have, I'm the facilities manager, I should know the exact count, but there's probably 25 buildings on campus. So just the cleanup alone from all the smoke damage and the soot was well over $1 million. I was stuck on campus for probably 5 days. I didn't see my family in those 5 days. We were able to find narrow little windows where we could get cell coverage. So I spoke to my wife on maybe the 3rd day, and she let me know that I was okay, my parents were okay, her parents in Fillmore were okay. A couple days after the fire, along with the firefighters, we were just putting out spot fires. We have different pumps on campus. We have some ponds in the down below area. We threw the pumps in those ponds and just started spraying. Maybe 5 days after, some of the staff were able to get back on campus, and it was, it's funny what happens to your level of tolerance after going through something like that. They would see a tree on fire and just be shocked, and we have to get that tree out. We had trees on campus that were on fire for 2 weeks. We just had no way of getting water there. And there were no structures in proximity. If the tree fell, the ground cover was already destroyed. We were monitoring them. We had a number of compost piles on campus that burned for months. Well, they were on fire for a couple of weeks, but they continued to smolder for months. 2 weeks ago, as a result of the Thomas fire, we had a number fire. One of those compost piles reignited. It had been smoldering for months. So we had 2 fire trucks on campus. I was out there in the school skip loader pulling the pile apart so the firefighters could douse it with water. It made a couple of students nervous to have fire trucks on campus again. But with the help of the firefighters, we're finally able to get it out. So hopefully that's the last remnant of flame that I'll see from the Thomas fire. As far as I know, they all came back. We had to make special accommodations. We thought some of them were going to have to leave. I had been there the whole time, so I wasn't even noticing the smoke and the smell anymore. But there were a couple of students that were very sensitive to it. And those dorms had been scoured probably 3 times. We had huge air cleaning equipment in all the buildings on the campus. And yet there was still enough remnant there. And it wasn't like they were overreacting. You could see physical reaction, possibly allergic reaction to it. And so we just had to hyper clean a few rooms and classrooms for them, but they were, I'm pretty sure they were able to stick it out. That's more the dean's job. You talk about people being, sensitive to it. So me and my guys were there, we were, our fingertips are burnt off from dealing with all these fires. Our boots are falling off us because they're melted. And we hadn't had a shower in days, and faculty and staff are showing up and complaining about the odor. It was a little hard for us to take. Yeah, you have no idea. And unfortunately, our concern was for the college, and we should have been more concerned about ourselves. It probably took us about 36 hours to realize we shouldn't be breathing this, and we broke out our respirators. All of us that were working the fire on campus developed lung infections afterwards. I had this small respirator, medicated respirator, that I had to use twice a day for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks after the fire. Well, actually, it was the guys working with me all went to the doctor right away. My doctor was on vacation because it was Christmas time, and so I was just going to wait till he got back. And luckily, my wife forced me to go to the urgent care, and both the doctor confirmed what she was saying, is that it can be life-threatening. So I wasn't that bad. It's just a lot of coughing and on that respirator, but got through it. We do have an incredible amount of landscaping to restore. The college suffered probably in the neighborhood of about $5 million damage total from the fire. A lot of that's the landscaping. They covered all the damage, all the smoke damage to the buildings, but our insurance policy only covered $50,000 for landscaping. So the Dan Murphy Foundation has in the past been very generous to the college, and they, soon after the fire, they gave us a grant over $500,000, I think $511,000, to help us with the landscaping restoration. So that makes me smile, because that funds me, right? I get to work with that and help restore the college's landscaping with that. That down below area, it looked like the moon. It was just covered in inches of ash. It was, we lost a couple hundred trees, but I have no idea, there's 1,500 down there, right? So there's still a fair number of trees standing. Before the fire, the down below was so lush. I mean, it looked more like out of a scene of a landscape out of Western Oregon. So green, you couldn't see 15 feet into it. It was so lush. Now you can see end to end, which is, hundreds of feet. I was down there the day after the fire, putting out spot fires. The ash, 6 inches to a foot deep from all the undergrowth burning in the trees. You'd occasionally step into a hot ash pit that used to be a tree. You just couldn't see it. The ash was all flat, and whoop. My boots didn't survive the Thomas fire. They were pretty well melted. They did a lot of work. I want a big old water truck on campus. I'm serious. They're kind of high priced now because of the Thomas fire, so I'm going to have to wait. But I can see a lot of value, even for irrigating. I'd use it to irrigate the outlying areas where we don't have irrigation or where the irrigation's been destroyed. We are in the process of trying to get water to every area around campus that we can. The developed campus has all the fire hydrants, and they're all stucco buildings with tile roofs, and that really helped. But the outlying areas, we don't have water there, so we're working on getting water there. Another foundation, the Wiegand Foundation, has given us a very generous grant. I think it's in the neighborhood of $400,000 to put in a large emergency generator at our Commons building. Just in case students get trapped on campus, we would still be able to feed them. We have a great water supply, but we need to make sure at any given moment, and it's been this way for probably the past 2 decades, we keep a supply of food on campus for a week to 10 days for everybody there. But if we lose power, we don't have any way to keep our cold storage cold, which means we only have maybe 2 days. So with the help with the Wiegand Foundation, we're going to be, that's one of the projects I'm working on now, is we're going to be putting a large emergency generator in. It's important to me, and it's important to the college, that we be as small a burden on the first responders as possible. That's why we evacuated so soon. We have a great relationship with the firefighters up at Station 20. They're 2 miles up the road. They come on campus to do training exercises. We want them there as often as we can. In fact, as a little funny aside, the afternoon before that compost pile reignited, I was giving a tour to the new fire chief of Station 20 campus with maybe 4 other firefighters. So I was calling them maybe 3 hours after they had left campus. Remember me? Okay, I said the last remnant. I was wrong. There's still oil seeps, they're not on the campus, but just off the campus, that are still smoldering. In fact, as I came here today, I noticed that the smoldering is ramping up. So after I leave here, I'll be calling the fire chief to alert him to that. The Ventura County firefighters come right out. They have to rappel down the cliff face, and they'll foam the oil seep once again. There was a fire the year I graduated, right after, the summer after I graduated. There was a fire that came close to the campus, ignited the oil seeps then, and they burned for over a year. They're not easy to put out. It does make, it can start smelling on campus. I think I'm too used to it. I have to be in proximity to the seep to smell it, but other people on campus will alert me when they smell it. Then I'll go and inspect it and call Ventura County Fire. We're not yet done with the Thomas Fire. So it could be months or years before that seeps out. It was 2 days after the fire, and we decided that things were calm enough that we would take a trip away from the campus to see how our neighbors fared and our friends and relatives. We know a lot of people who live between the campus and Upper Ojai. So Andrew, Ben, and I can't remember whose truck we took, went out to check things out. We went to Santa Barbara first. Santa Barbara Monastery, just across the creek from Thomas Aquinas College. We provide their drinking water for them. So you see the nuns come in their habits and their little Toyota pickup with all these water bottles in the back to fill up their water. We wave to each other. And just like the college, it was amazing. I mean, there were active fires everywhere. I don't know if there was any firefighters were stationed there. They had just built a chapel and it was all concrete block. It's beautiful. There were fires burning next to it. We stomped out what we could, but we really knew that we were just making ourselves feel better, because there were fires everywhere. There could easily have been 24 spot fires in proximity to their building. We did what we can. There was no water there. The building was still standing, and it rode through. It was just amazing, just like the campus. The next place we went to, my aunt lives in Camp Bartlett, and it's a house that I'd grew up with. Gone. Still on fire. Obviously, that was the most intense moment for me during that fire, to see my aunt's house gone. I was in shock. I hoped I was standing in the wrong place. I regret that I tried to save nothing from my aunt's house. I didn't want to go on. I wanted to hide. But there were 2 young men waiting for me in the pickup. So I sucked it up and got back in the pickup. And we proceeded down the road. Bill Lindsay, a longtime family friend. House is on the south side of the 150. Gone. So I had had enough. I didn't want to see any more friends. My son rented a house up in Upper Ojai. People I worked with, their houses were up there. Luckily, I wasn't driving, so we kept going. And so we went to the houses. I can't remember the street right next to the Summit, the little hamburger place up there. My son lives on that street, and two other young men, one of them that works for the college, lives right next door to my son. Their houses were fine. The fire had burned to their backyards. And it was kind of endearing to me when the rough and tumble electricians from across the street came out to tell us to not stop, to just keep moving. Every place we stopped after that, neighbors came out to protect their neighbors' homes. And it was kind of a little shiny spot that I was being accused of being a looter. It was heartwarming that somebody was looking out for my son and for his friends and the other young men that I know. Koningstein Road. One of our vice presidents lives in Koningstein Road. We turn into Koningstein Road and the first house is just gone. It's just a chimney sticking up out of the ground. His house is right next door to that. With the guest house, with the other young man and his family lives in the guest house that I know. I felt bad for the neighbor, but my friend's house was still standing. Fire had burnt into his backyard. He had not stayed. I don't know if the firefighters were up there. It may have just been by the grace of God. I'm so happy that I got back in that truck because I needed to see that all the other houses were standing. Another guy that I've known for decades and I work with up at the college lives on Grape Hill, and so we went to inspect his house. And we got out of the truck, and so we were walking around making sure there were no spot fires around his house. And his neighbor walks up, and I suspected the neighbor was probably armed. And I told him, I know Sean. We're just checking his house out for him. He goes, oh, I'm on the phone with Sean right now. What's your name? I told him my name's Clark. He says he doesn't know you. We're kind of big on practical jokes. Sean, tell him you know me. So, yeah, it was, we probably went to close to a dozen other homes. And other than those first houses that we saw, of the people that we knew, their houses were fine. But that's not everybody's house. It was just hard to see. Weeks after the fire, my sons wanted to drive around Ventura to see the destruction. And another friend of mine lost his house at the top. His mom lost his house at the top of Ondolando, and he had just lost his dad. So his mom had lost her husband of, 40, 50 years, and then she loses her home. And I told my sons, I have no interest. I don't want to see it. I've not gone to see Mark's childhood home. I don't feel like I need to. My daughter was out from Texas with their kids for my dad's funeral. The house I live in was my grandfather's. So it was my grandson's great-great-grandfather's house. So he's the fifth generation to be in that house. He's the fifth generation to play with this gorgeous 1920s toy fire truck, my grandfather's toy fire truck. he's the 5th generation to play with that fire truck in the particular room that he was playing with. It was just, I took a picture of it. It was neat to see.